If you are like me and you enjoy high mobility builds that can decimate packs quickly while also traversing the maps at extreme pace and kills bosses in no time with no effort, then Shadow Step might be for you. Normally, you build Shadow Step around dealing high damage with Shadow Step itself and Shadow Clone, but Season 10 is a season of traps. With a high lucky hit chance on Shadow Step, you can utilize this by combining it with Bursting Venoms to quickly trigger poison traps with every single Shadow Step. You're combining this with the contamination aspect in order to deal high burst damage every single time you're Shadow Stepping to a target. This is also extremely potent, but it's even more potent when you're combining this with Scoundrel's Leathers, which gives trap skills a core tag as well. So you can utilize the new Season 10 perks like Power Siphon that increase your damage down with core skills, but also Enervated Strike, which is also a massive multiplier for core skills. In order to deal as much damage as possible with lucky hit effects, we want to have Fist of Fate. Fist of Fate increases your lucky hit percent by an absurd amount while also giving you a strong multiplier to go along with it. The attack speed is also kind of nice. Basically, you're scaling your damage very similarly to how you would scale your damage with Dance of Knives. Those familiar with Dance of Knives this season will say, wait a second, this is basically just the Dance of Knives build, both a Shadow Step, and yes, you would be correct. Instead of Ahu Quacks, we are using Yule Quacks, because we do not hit enough times in a short window to trigger Ahu Quacks. But this is still triggering it enough so that we can benefit from Starless Skies as long as you are continuously hitting. Another difference is that we're not using the Umbrous aspect on our pants and instead opting to use aspect of Cruel Sustenance. For the same reason that we're not triggering Ahu Quacks fast enough, we cannot rely on the second wind passive reliably. However, by swapping the key passive to Victimize instead, we can benefit from this barrier instead, which gives us 100% uptime of barrier in combat. Another key difference is the aspect of Inner Calm. Shadow Step counts as teleporting, which means it does not break the increased damage dealt by Inner Calm when it's at max stacks, so we can abuse this pretty easily. However, if you feel like you're moving around manually too much, you can choose Aspect of Conceited instead. For Shadow Step, we also cannot make use of things like Hit and Run because we're often kind of stuck to the target. In speedrunning context, you can definitely use Hit and Run and you will do so much damage. However, when you're doing high-end pits, you will mostly be stuck in place or in for a very long time, which would mean you're dealing less damage instead. To get around this, we are using a Beast Cornered, and we're gonna stay permanently low life. This is scary, and this is not recommended for the hardcore enjoyers out there. Apart from that, we are also using Accelerating Chaos. This is a high lucky hit build, so this will give us a fair bit of cooldown reduction. In terms of Glyphs and Paragon, we're using the same board and Glyphs as we do in the Dance of Knives build. We're using Ambush, we're using Snare, Canny, Headhunter, and Versatility, as all of these are buffing your core damage. It does look a little bit weird, seeing as Versatility explicitly states that non-core skills deal 25% increased damage. Added core tags, like the core tag from Scoundrel's Leathers, doesn't make Versatility not work. It's the baseline tags that it looks at. So Poison Trap, when it's added the core tag, it still makes Versatility work. The rotation in combat is quite simple, but you have a few buttons to be aware of. You want to make sure that you're having your Poison Imbuement active at all times. Because we're not using the Umbrous aspect, you also have to cast Dark Shroud manually in order to be protected at all times. You also want to make sure that you cast Caltrops and Smoke Grenade for increased damage done, but you also want to cast Caltrops because casting it gives you a free death trap every 10 seconds through Scoundrel's Leathers. So in combat, this is roughly how it will look like. Dark Shroud, you have Poison Imbuement, Caltrops would pull everything in, Smoke Grenade, and then you hold down Shadow Step. And you also need to make sure that you're pressing Poison Imbuement whenever it is about to run out of charges. The gear requirement for this build is actually not too terrible, but there is one part that is quite annoying. You want to make sure that your Shadow Step is below 3 seconds cooldown so that it's resetting itself indefinitely. But in order to get there, you essentially need to have Assassin's Stride with Mobility cooldown reduction GA and triple crit to get there. And then you still need to temper a Shadow Step cooldown reduction on one of your rings. For 99% of the content in the game, this build will take you exactly where you need to go. It will go through Torment 4 without any problems, and it will clear hit high enough so that you can level your glyphs. However, there is a small problem that it's basically impossible to solve with how the Chaos Unique system is working. It's this. That little shadow variant on pit bosses will murder you because you do not get to decide where you're standing. And Poison Traps is covering the entire ground, so you can't see when they're spawning. Apart from that, this build is actually really fun and is very tanky. I've basically stood in everything in pit 100 and I can stay alive as long as I'm shadow stepping. But unfortunately, some pit bosses will be borderline impossible due to that little Elias shadow encounter that will basically murder you with fireballs no matter what you do. Be aware of that. If you want to deal damage with Shadow Step instead of Poison Trap, you can follow the Mythic variant in the build guide below. That build will do less damage than this build, but it is pretty similar in many ways. For now, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.